Good afternoon, welcome to Advertising Week Europe. VR and AR is where it's at this afternoon. I'm joined now by Breen, who's the Senior Manager in Product Management for Vive. Graham, welcome to Advertising Week Europe.
Thank you.
Very exciting times for your industry, and things are really mushrooming, aren't they?
It's crazy, actually. I mean, if you look where we've come from when we very first announced Vive a couple of years ago, in what was essentially a development project and a lot of cables and something relatively unstable, through to now, it's already been a consumer product for a year. And the interesting thing at the moment is that companies are starting to realize how they can use it also in a productive manner, not just as a novelty, but actually something that solves real business problems.
So what sort of areas are we seeing this move into now? As you say, it's no longer just gaming, is it at all?
No. On the consumer side, a lot of the early adopters is the gamers because they love the technology and what it brings them. But actually, if you look at some of the other elements, take, say, education and training. Earlier on this year at CES, we actually had, it's an Australian university training firefighters in VR, where they attached one of our Vive trackers that would basically allows any object to be tracked. They attach it to a fire hose. You put the VR headset on, and all of a sudden you're able to learn how you can put out fires, which is, if you think of that in terms of training, but without the real danger, without the real cost, without the real smoke everywhere, what that can do, it makes things so much more efficient, so much easier. And that's just one example. I mean, we also had a great one 2 weeks ago in Barcelona at MWC. We were with a company who were actually showing how you can learn to weld. And if you think of the cost of learning to weld and the heat and the danger, you can get to 90% competent just purely through VR. It's amazing.
And are all these industries picking up on how useful this can be, or is it still quite a slow burn at the moment?
It's actually interesting. It's the speed in our inbox is crazy. So what we've seen is it's taken about a year or so for a lot of the companies using it to really come out with something. And that's because they've wanted to do things properly, they've wanted to make sure they comply with health and safety regulations, or just do something that does their brand justice. Now we're actually seeing companies use it. So I've mentioned training, but actually there's a lot of other ways too. A lot of the automotive companies, as an example, are using it as a tool through elements of design, but also into retail. So if you think of a typical showroom, take Audi as an example, they're using Vive. A typical showroom would have space for 4 or 5 cars. But if you've got 100 different configurations, how on earth can you convince your customer that it's worth up buying into the new wheels on there? In fact, them deciding they would rather have it in blue and not red. Those seats look better. You put a VR headset on there, it's purely you as the customer who can create something. And what that creates as an affinity to a brand and an affinity to a product is pretty immense.
How interesting is it for you coming to events like this where you see what other people in this field are doing? It's a competitive thing as well, but It can be collaborative, can't it, as well? Because you may be able to complement what you're doing with each other.
I think because we're still relatively early in the whole timescale of VR, it's a very much a let's do this together approach. And that's great. And to be honest, I come back absolutely invigorated from events like this because you see all these great ideas and you're thinking, you're going to be successful there. Just let the people run. I mean, there's a great example to our side here. We've got a company showing a haptic glove with a VR tracker on it, Neuclon. And with that, they're actually then able to, if you think of that in, say, a retail environment, people purchase online, we know that. But if people have a haptic feel of something, so when you're buying, you're buying a coat, you like a feel of it, you'll be prepared to spend more. But it's actually proven that those triggers are created in your brain, even just with the impression of it. You don't actually have to touch something. So if you can actually achieve some of those things in VR,
how long do you think it will be, and things are moving so quickly, before all of these things are fairly commonplace in our homes? Because technology has moved so quickly, it's impossible to even, sometimes you blink and things have just moved on, haven't they? But the things you're mentioning, which are starting to happen now, before too long, we'll all be doing them, I guess.
It's interesting, actually, because if you look at amongst, say, the early adopters, there's already thousands upon thousands who have this in their home, who go home, they use it every night, and it can become a social tool, a gaming tool. Until it infiltrates then wider, I think something we're going to be seeing over the next year or two. And I think home is one element, but I think it's going to touch on more and more points of our lives. So whether that's you go to a shopping centre, you're going to come across VR, you're going to purchase something hybrid, like I'm mentioning cars, you're thinking of buying a new flat. Wouldn't it be nice to see the layout inside before it's even built? That kind of thing. So it's going to start touching on various areas of our lives. And that's how I think really how it's going to impact us.
Now, obviously as a journalist I have to do my research, and on your Twitter feed it says you're a running geek and a cat charmer. Has VR touched either of these two areas, or will it?
So VR, well, let's do the cat one first. I think my cat's bemused by VR, so she just sits there and naps. So VR as a sports tool is actually fascinating. So running at the moment, I go off and run 10, 20 miles in the countryside, so VR doesn't really solve that one for me yet, but that's time. But if you look at it in terms of a sporting sense, we first took this to the Netherlands about 18 months ago, and through somebody's contacts, we showed it to my Ajax players, and their first thought was, they put it on, and they began saying to each other, oh wow, think of the training ground moves we can practice in this. So you can actually do real-world sports problem solving. A lot of people are using VR for example, cycling applications. So yes, it's already touching there.
Well, look, fascinating to talk to you. Thank you very much for chatting to us today. Enjoy the rest of this week. So the cat's not quite got it yet, but sports have, and industry have, and you will shortly.